HVAC 360 salutes women in engineering. According to a 2017 report, about 22% of undergraduate engineering degrees are awarded to women. While this number is growing, the number of women making it into the engineering workforce falls short of that percentage, which I personally find a troubling statistic. I feel that everyone would agree that getting an engineering degree is not easy, far from it, but that engineering is a great career option. So I would implore those graduates not to turn away from this great career path without a significant fight. To women in engineering today, thank you. Thank you for your contribution. Thank you for just being here. You make turning the tide of diversity that much easier. And it's that diversity that ultimately leads to better engineered solutions. And better engineered solutions is exactly what the world needs. Hey everybody, welcome back. Matt Nelson here, your host for HVAC 360, helping you be the best and the brightest in the field of HVAC. I do that by sharing information, lessons learned, or talking with industry experts. And if all this information leaves you hungry for more, you can sign up for my weekly newsletter over at HVAC360.com or subscribe to my YouTube channel. So, what's up for this week? This week, we're going to be talking with Charli Matthews, founder and CEO of Empowering Brands. If you're a longtime listener, you will notice that she's a returning guest that I caught up with recently at the AHR Expo in Orlando after 10 years. So, let's hear what Charli has been up to and cut to the tape. All right, today we're talking with Charli Matthews, who is the founder and CEO of Empowering Brands. How are you doing today, Charli?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Matt.
And you are actually back on again. I had to get in the Wayback Machine and take a look at my past episodes. You were actually on episode number 29, which was way back in 2011 when you had just started your Empowering Pumps journey.
Yeah, it's funny, Matt. I didn't even remember doing that until I saw you at the AHR conference and kind of reconnected. I'm like, oh yeah, we did that way back. And listening to that was really, really inspiring and taught me that I was on track then. But there was a couple things that changed.
So I guess tell me what has changed in the past 10 years.
Yeah, so when we started Empowering Pumps, it was to teach people about social media, to connect the industry digitally. And there was a couple key focuses there that we'll get into later that were on point. But for the social media aspect, we were educating people on how to use the social media tools to complete their profile 100%, to kind of develop this idea of everyone connecting and collaborating through social media, but with no real strategy, just knowing and seeing that this is somewhere that we needed to go and that we needed to teach people how to use it because we could see there was an opportunity. So fast forward, you see, the pump industry is online and connecting through social media, and now our training is shifted from fill out your profile and learn these tools to, okay, what is the strategy? Who are you trying to connect with? And what is the best platform to do that? So there's a lot of different digital media tools. We can target and remarket to our audiences that we have, so that our audience, our followers are so much more important than they were. It's just when we were doing the organic social posting. And so you really have to engage with that audience and give them what they're looking for in all the different aspects. And so I think that's the number one thing that's changed, just technology and acceptance. Being the first is not always easy. And so I think that, seeing that before it happened was a blessing. And I love that I got to kind of push our industry forward on social media. But, looking at what's the next steps there is always something we do. So, but it was really enlightening to see, from that episode, okay, we were on track. We were going to cover mining and HVAC, which we've been doing recently, actually. Those were two initiatives that were really important to me, and I didn't feel that were being covered. And so, that's the start of our relationship here, Matt, at HVAC.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, I guess a little bit interesting because, you really had to, at the time, because there was the early adopters, those people who, are gung-ho and always, online, they get the social media, but there's so much of the industry that was out there that really didn't see the value in getting online. Like, what am I supposed to do when I get here? What happens when I fill out my profile? And they need to understand, what to do next. And I think that was a lot of, the education that you're talking about.
Yeah. And I think also, Matt, I think it's important that we realize that sometimes when we are that, leader, that we need to figure out where we stand with our audience and our customers. And so it was great when I read this book, Change Intelligence, from Barbara Trotline. She kind of says, whether you're head, heart, or the hands leadership. And I realized that I thought, that I led with my, heart. I love people. I'm trying to connect people and all of this. And then I realized that it's with my head and I'm running off and following my purpose, but I leave people behind. And so one of the things, we didn't talk about in that first episode was a print edition of what, we were doing digitally. I never crossed my mind to do that because I was so focused on digital media. And so a couple years back, I was at the HI conference, and The Economist was talking about kind of the people who were in leadership roles for the next 10 years. And I realized that group of people would not be using Twitter and would never see what we were doing online, say for LinkedIn or Facebook. And so how could I show them that? And so we created a print magazine to show that. And that was just a couple years back. It does have hashtags and links all throughout. So still digitally focused, but just to show what we were doing in a different way. And then that is based on that audience and really the followers that I left behind. So I think that's a really important thing to note, is just to make sure that just because you see the future, that you figure out a way to show everyone else what you see.
Now that HI conference, that is the Hydraulic Institute, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
They are the authority on pumps and pump systems.
All right, so that's right in your wheelhouse.
Yes, and I've been attending there for years now. I remember when I started, they were my very first phone call. I was like, I want to work with you. I didn't want to work with the authority, right? And so it took a while because they didn't have a place for media. And when Michael Mashad came in, I spoke to him right at the get-go and kind of put in this vision of how media can help the organization on the advocacy side. And they made a place for media. And so I'm very thankful for that, thankful for that relationship, because it helps us understand what we need to be talking about. How can we really help the industry if we don't understand how a pump system works, or, for example, the regulations, how important it is. Because setting the standard is one thing, and that's what HI does. But media is supposed to push that envelope and say, okay, how can we do better? And recently, our last magazine, it had, make an impact on the cover. And it also says, how can we do better understanding the U.S. Department of Energy regulations? And so it went into that saying, yeah, we've got the standard, but can we do better? Is it available? And it is in some cases. Does it make sense economically? And so I think that as media partners, we get to kind of push that status quo. And coming from me, who's in continuous improvement, both in my team and my life and the industry, that gives me the real insight to know if I'm way off, or for example, in the last HI meeting, we've got some real issues to handle with infrastructure sinking and different things that we need to take care of as the pump industry. And so how are we going to do that? Well, first we have to talk about it and make sure that everybody hears about it. And so, yeah, I think it's invaluable to go to conferences like HI, and then the Fluid Sealing Association is another, really important organization to me, because I've had a lot of personal development that happens there, and they kind of push you to lead and speak up and present. And I think that that's what we need from these organizations in our industry, to develop our talent for the next workforce.
Right. And I think, it's kind of important now that you kind of, talk about it in the sense of the industry. They've always kind of had print magazines, and that was pretty much it. But, back when we started, it really didn't have the social media, that sort of infrastructure that really existed. In fact, actually, at the last AHR Expo in Orlando here was the first time that they actually had podcasts as they had podcast booth, and so that was really kind of a sea change. And I think it's important when you talk about leadership like you are, that it's a very, it's individualistic. Nobody needs to grant you permission to take on leadership. Nobody needs to grant you permission to hear your voice being heard. If you want to be heard, obviously there needs to be information that needs to be out there. And, the more media, like you said, the more media that gives important pieces like, the DOE, the new DOE regulations. The more voices we have out there kind of spreading the word, the better. So, don't discount yourself if you're just, starting out.
Yeah, I agree with that. It was so great. And I've seen that at a couple of different trade shows, the podcast stations, and that makes it real for people. It's not like, oh, those people are just kind of playing over there talking online. Haha. It's kind of similar to, any type of blogs or, that feel of, who are you talking to? It made it real. And I think that, no matter what, we have to embrace these different types of technology. And if you really put that into perspective with the pump industry, when you're talking about digital systems, connected plants, and smart pumps was kind of the term way back. But, as we move forward in these intelligent solutions, we have to understand that digital is important. How do we protect ourselves from different things that happen when you're all connected? And so we really need to make sure that we put the focus on that. But for example, and you said that about permission. One of the things that was in my Empowering Women's video was you don't have to ask permission to call a meeting. And I think that I've always struggled with that need for approval, or that need for permission, acceptance. Kind of first off, right, I want to go to the authority and, ask their permission to, come into this market. And once you grow into leadership, you realize that that's not the case. Like you said, Matt, as a leader, you have to take your stance and believe in it, and get the information so that you're educated about the topics. And so I'm constantly looking for that, and definitely social media gives us that ability to obtain information, also to inform people. You'll see great communities being built. One in particular is the water industry as a whole. They do some really amazing campaigns out there. Water's Worth It is one of my favorites that they, have been doing for, I want to say 10 years, but they kind of brought it back recently. I think it was last WEFTEC that they brought it back, and I'm like, yay, I get to use that. And it's not just me out there using that hashtag anymore. So it's been really great to watch how something as simple as a hashtag can bring people together.
So now, I guess, kind of going back from you started with pumps, and over the past decade here, you've kind of expanded upon that pump. I guess that basic pump. You've gone into like valves and equipment and things like that. What was kind of the justification for this? Why did you feel the need to broaden your focus?
Well, I think that's mostly from our customers wanting it. So every time I would, kind of go to a conference or something, when are you going to empower valves, or when are you going to empower compressors, or, that type of conversation. And so just listening to the need from the customers, which is what we try to do always, and creating that. Now, I feel like we did that, went about that the wrong way a little bit, where we set up, a different website for each product, and then had to rethink that and come back in and say the end user group is the same. So let's not make it hard for them to find the information. So then we pulled it back into one site. But really, the overarching reason why people want to do this is because we had to change from, products, or, individual products to a systems approach. These have to talk to each other. The industries have to talk to each other, so that we can have this energy efficiency standard, which includes all the parts of the system. And so we have to educate ourselves, and then also the industry. One example of this is, mechanical engineer versus electrical engineer. They now have to talk to each other, and used to they'd be like, that's their field, this is my field. Now they have to communicate and build things together in that collaborative approach to building more efficient systems, which has always been part of our goal. But we just do that by sharing, our clients and the industry knowledge through our platform. I used to laugh, all the time, where they said, Charlie's the pump girl, or, whatever. I would always say, I know just enough to be dangerous. You don't want me working on that pump. But, at the same time, it's my job to do what I do and get that message out there, of all the opportunities to learn and connect in our industry.
Excellent. Now, I guess you've kind of, in recent years, you've stepped beyond the empowering pumps, the empowering compressors, valves, equipment, sort of like that. You've started the empowering brands. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so similar to what I was just talking about with, people coming to us to buy pumps, or learn about pumps. A lot of the times we'd get calls for, people thinking we were distributors, and I felt like our messaging was a little bit off. And we kind of did a video saying, we've changed our, name from Empowering Pumps to Empowering Brands, to let people know that we're a digital media marketing services company, but for the industry. And so that message changed, not really that we were doing anything different, because we were always doing marketing and media for the industry, but just the name change itself was like, hey, y'all, this is what we really do. So, look for us for those needs. Similarly, I felt like we could do social media help for anyone, and we weren't quite in the industry, as you said, kind of pumps, valves, motors, compressors. We can help any of those people with marketing and social media services and that type of thing. And so I just wanted it to branch outside of pumps, even though pumps is the heart of the system and special to my heart for sure. We wanted to let the industry know that we're here to serve in that digital media marketing space.
Yeah, I know that, not every company has the benefit of having staff that just does social media.
That's right.
And that is, when they don't, then it gets really scary, because these are just people who, are, doing something else on a day-to-day basis, whether it's, just being a secretary, or, handling accounting or something like that. And then they're tasked with something else, and they don't really know what to do with it. So the fact that you can come in there and help, the smaller companies, and, is really great.
Yeah, and I think that to point that out, like, we know how to do it, so we're much more efficient in that. So it could take somebody a lot of time to try to figure out, what hashtags they need to be using, what industries are out there to connect with, what events are going on, what product, should I be pushing out at this specific time? And because we've been doing it for 10 years, it's very easy for us to talk to someone, figure out what their goals are, and just make a plan for them. And I think that's where our benefit is now in helping people do that. But then also we can, if they don't have somebody, we can do it for them. We have, all the automated systems that we can, help them get set up. They can approve that message. But we also can do things like plan that out so that they can be reactive and engage in the moment. And that's where the real social media work comes in. When you're trying to capture something live, and which I think is, one of the best things, or one of my favorite things to do is live things. You can't be worried about whether you sent out the right press release. You need that already done. So that's kind of the help that we give to the industry in that regard. And then, just looking for that next way to help the industry. That's what we're always trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I think a lot of people might not realize, it's so easy to think of, the different brand names out there. And to realize that the company might not necessarily be that big. They might have a lot of, manufacturing, a big manufacturing component, but, as far as the, the front end staff, they might not necessarily be that big. I think that was something that, the more I know the industry, the more it kind of surprises me how small some of these operations are. You're like, I thought it would be bigger.
That's right. And, we have a small staff too, and what we can accomplish with our small staff is amazing, but we feel that pain. We've been there. So we understand that of not having enough, time and help. And so we always say we want to be an extension of your team. And we mean that, like, we know what you're trying to get done. So let us help you. The other part of that, some of, like you said, the very large organizations, they also have a small staff dedicated to this. And it's even, I want to say, more challenging when that company doesn't believe in social media and they're trying to compete in today's world. And they're still like, I'm not going on social media. What a challenge. And so it's baby steps. Okay. Do one thing that's digital and show them results. And then we'll kind of move them forward. So there's still plenty of companies there that are just tiptoeing around into social media. And I have to kind of shift backwards sometimes, 8 to 10 years. And I'm like, okay, what would I have done then? Let's do that again to get them going. So it's very interesting.
So what are the I guess some of the best practices you could advise, or maybe are there some kind of common missteps that companies take when it comes to social media?
Well, I would say now there's no reason to just be posting, right? You really need a strategy. You need to plan it out. One of the best practices I'll give away is you should sit down with your team and plan out the year. And so if you can come up with, let's just say 52 topics, right? So once a week, you're going to send something out. If you can sit down a day and just come up with 52 topics, you're on your way to building a really great program. Other thing is, you really need to find somebody who likes social media, who understands it, who wants to be on there. It's a challenge for people who, they're forced to do this. You can tell it in their messaging. And so look for people in your organization that, or seek them out, who really enjoy connecting with people. I don't think I could do, this for 10 years if I didn't believe in, the power of social media and the power to connect people all over the globe. And so that's the person you want on your team that says, oh, why don't we do this? This is like a creative idea. People will love this, versus we're just going to send out this picture and try to get a lead. So that's what I would say is kind of the two best things that I'll give you.
Now, as far as you have also started, I don't know how recent, but one of the great things that you've done is the Empowering Women in Industry. What can you tell me about that project?
Yeah, so I think it's a needed project. First, it started with my individual need. I was trying to lead in different organizations. I kind of got to the point where I felt like I wasn't making a significant impact, and how could I be better at leading a group? I also, had had this idea that we would bring these women together from our industry, and I asked other people to help with that. And so we had this initial dinner because I kind of pushed us in that direction. And after that, these women started coming up to me and being like, "Okay, Charli, what are we doing next? What are we doing? Where is it? What meeting are we having?" And I was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! How did I become this leader of this initiative?" And I wasn't quite ready, right? And so I was looking around for someone to ask advice, and I realized there were no women in leadership in my connections on LinkedIn. I have 7,000 plus connections, and the only two people that were in a leadership role were my clients who were expecting me to lead them, and I was overwhelmed. And so I said, okay, let me just create a group and see. And I think Sienna kind of mentioned this to me. Let's make a group for these women. And we watched that group grow from like 0 to 500 overnight, it felt like. And I was like, wow, okay, there is a lot of need here. So what do? I want to bring people together. I want to have an event. I want to make it grandiose because I like the spotlight, if you will, on projects. And so we created this event in Chicago. It was last year, and the turnout was amazing. The support from the industry was great, and it was so needed for this group of community for women in this. It really is a male-dominated space still. We are here. Women are working here, and so having something for them specifically gave us that sense of community. A lot of people, described it as like an exhale of being in a room full of women, because we didn't realize that we were even missing that. We're all focused on doing the best that we can do for our jobs. And we didn't realize that we didn't have a community of women around to support us. And so that was what we built together. And we continue to see the need for it in different organizations. Last week, I had the experience of a gentleman coming up to me and saying, women can't be engineers. They can be project managers, but they can't be engineers. And I, taken back, but thankfully I've had some training now on feedback. I said, would you have said that to these women engineers in the room that you're standing with? Because there are women engineers in every category. And I think it's important that we realize that people still have that mindset that we can't do it. And so we need to have that reinforcement from and encouragement from other women who have. And so the role models that we're shining a light on are so important for our young people coming in, that they know. And it's not just engineering. That one's just top of mind right now. There's some really great work being done in the tradeswomen group. Welding, of course, has been highlighted even by our president, the need for trades. And I think that is great. And it's also that we need to make sure that we, educate ourselves that, automation is also a part of that. So every skill and every job is important. So from sales to marketing to admin to engineer to operator, we bring women together from all those different industries and have a very diverse group of people to learn from. So that's the main thing, to connect and educate these women. And then also to have advocates. We need men in the industry that also support women and really understand why we need community and why we need to learn the leadership skills that we may not have had access to as we've been growing our career. So we do have them out there. I'm thankful for the men who have supported us in this, and look forward to our next one. Our next national conference is in New Orleans, October the 8th, where we're going to have a panel of men and women discussing, how can you empower women in our industry. So I'm really excited about that.
That's really good work. I know that at least from my perspective, it's just a numbers game, so to speak.
Right.
I mean, the women, 50% of the workforce. Why wouldn't you want the best working in your industry?
That's right. And I did when I started that. I'm kind of missed that, Matt. When I started talking about kind of bringing these women together for dinner, it was because I saw, as I was, really researching our workforce and how to, how are we going to fix this knowledge gap and skills gap, and the baby boomers leaving us, and how are we going to fix this? And I saw that women were the opportunity, bringing them in and educating them, and that's going to be the way that we can fill that gap. And we also kind of talking about the different things such as climate change and how that's affecting our infrastructure, and what disaster is going to happen next. You kind of need to have a woman's approach to come in and have like a difference of thought, right? So that's what I was thinking about when I was saying why we should have this community group that started with that dinner, was because they are the ones that are going to fill the gap. We have them coming out of college. It's more even there, and then coming into a workforce that is, just not representative of what we could do for our industry.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of a documentary that I was watching the other day, and it was about, I think it was in Iceland, and it was around like bankings. Actually, it was around like boards for banks, and they had made a law saying that the board has to be at least, it was not 50%, but I think it was like over 40%. So it could be the minority, but it had to be at least close to half of the people had to be women. And it was interesting because a lot of that kind of stemmed from, I guess the financial crisis had hit them, and a lot of the banks had been, I don't know if they'd been wiped out or if they had been a lot of trouble. But when they did that, obviously there was a lot of kickback from the men. But it actually provided a lot of stability, because you did get the more conservative approach, or the more the kinder, gentler focus that you would get with getting additional perspective on your board. And it wasn't just and I think the important thing was that it just wasn't one or two token women on the board. It was a significant portion, and I think that really kind of plays into the fact that I think that women operate better when they're in a group.
Yeah, there's a great story that came up in our Tuscaloosa conference about a woman in the financial space that says, I'm not going to be in a boardroom if I'm the only woman. There has to be another woman in the room before I'm coming in there. And the point of that is, I've been the only woman in the room, so I understand that feeling. But I'm pretty strong-willed, if you will, determined. That doesn't bother me. But you can see the dynamic change. It changes once when there's one woman in the room, and then it changes even more when there's two. So if she says something and she's not heard, or she's spoken over, the other woman will say something like, I think Charli was trying to say something to that effect. And we need to do that with our men in the room too that don't speak up. But it is so much easier to know that you have support when it's more even, and okay, she's got my back. Now, a lot of the times she does not have your back, and it's a competitive situation. And so the more that we have not just two, right, and the more that it becomes very diverse in both race and gender and industry, then that makes that conversation a conversation versus I'm going to tell you what we should do and nobody, says anything different, or let's have a discussion about what could we actually do? What is your point of view? And then I think that is the point of what we're trying to accomplish, is everybody's experience makes them who they are, and every voice in the room adds something to the table. And so let's make sure that our women are strong, that they know how to communicate, which is number one on my list of skills that we're teaching at our conference. And just whatever field they're in, that they have the ability to obtain those tools. That's the main goal.
So now, what if somebody wanted to get involved with the Empowering Women? How would they go about it?
Well, they can just contact me. We have a website, empoweringwomeninindustry.com. And so you can see kind of past things we've done there. And you can also see, just the imagery that's there, videos, that kind of thing about what we're doing. But also they can share their story. There's no cost there to, get involved, share your story. Our podcast, empoweringwomenpodcast.com. They are filled really for this season, but interact with that. I know today actually Mel is going live on Facebook to kind of do a Q&A. So there's a lot of different ways to engage with us there. And I'd say, look for our local events. We're doing local events as well as the national conference. The national conference has an awards section. So I challenge people to think about, what, award they would be qualified for, and get one of their friends or colleagues to nominate them and write a letter about the work that they've been doing. It's harder for us to do because we don't think that we're worthy a lot of the times, but we are. And then also nominate your friends that deserve this, and your colleagues that deserve this award. Everybody's a winner. If somebody's going to write a one-page letter about you, you're a pretty big deal, and I want you to know that. So that's what we're doing right now. We've already done the call to papers and kind of organizing the agenda for that. But yeah, get involved and as we go to different industry events, there's all types of women's groups to get involved with. I was hesitant to ever get into a women's group because of the stigma that may be associated with that. And so I was wrong. And I realized that we do need women to support us and encourage us. Similar to what you were talking about, kind of that comforter in the room, that woman in the room is an encourager. That is one of the great things that we do to encourage men and women. And so if there's not any women in the room, it's got to be exhausting to do the work and never get a pat on the back. And so hopefully this initiative for patting ourselves on the back as leading women will trickle down and lead to, let's acknowledge what our industry does. We couldn't do anything without the pump industry, your water, your food, your energy, nothing, right? So let's really shine the light on our industry. And, this is the several ways that we're doing that, but that's my kind of call to action for people to get involved and stand in that spotlight.
Now, do you have a Facebook group or a LinkedIn group, or where on the social media?
Yes.
Yes.
Everywhere. Yes.
So wherever you are, yeah.
Go ahead.
So wherever people are, you are.
Yes. And I think that Instagram is my favorite because you can do the stories and see the engagement pretty quickly. But, for industry, LinkedIn, we do have a group, it's just Empowering Women in Industry. And then Twitter is at Women in IND, because, Twitter won't let you have long names there. So all of ours are a little different there. And then, Facebook, we don't have a group, but we have a page there. We have a local group, so our Empowering Women Locally, which started in Alabama, which is my local community. And we'll continue to see that grow as we get women who are willing to lead those groups and conferences. And so, yeah, we're everywhere online and really accessible. If someone has a question or wants to make a statement, we're behind that.
Excellent. Well, I really appreciate you coming back on, Charli. And I just say, any final thoughts that you have?
Yeah, I want to thank you, Matt, for leading us in our podcast. If you were doing podcasts, in 2011, you were ahead of the game, and so I want to thank you for that. I had not really, listened to a bunch of podcasts until we kind of got into it. It's one of the most valuable tools to share content, and really, that's what we need to do is to obtain all that content from our industry leaders before they decide to retire, and then also give us a way to kind of talk about these big issues and see, moving forward, how can we make a difference? So I think you'll see a trend with more podcasts. Even my daughter and I kind of played with the podcast the other day, and I got to tell you, she's a pro. She's ready. She could go into media right now. So just leading the way for our workforce, even our young children.
All right. Well, like I said, thanks so much for your time, Charli.
Thank you, Matt.
All right. Thanks again to Charli for taking the time to chat with me. Check out the show notes, and there's a lot of them, for links that we mentioned during the interview. You can find those show notes over at hvac360.com/158. And also, thanks so much to you for taking the time and listening. I hope this was helpful. If you know somebody who's looking to step up their HVAC game, consider sharing this episode or another one of your favorites with them. This is by far the best thing that you can do to spread the word about the podcast. I want to encourage you to subscribe over at hvac360.com for a weekly dose of the written word, or browse on over to my YouTube channel and subscribe if video is more of your thing. Lastly, it would be greatly honored if you would consider leaving me a rating or review on Apple Podcast. All right, that's a wrap for this episode of HVAC 360. I'm Matt Nelson, helping you be the best and the brightest in the field of HVAC. And as always, know what you build and share what you know.